Hello and welcome to Genesis, the language of creation. I am Rabbi Rafi Maleh, everybody's Rebbe. Sometimes I forget which series we're doing because thank God we've got the Prophet series. We just finished the book of Ovadia. Everybody should go to the playlist and watch through the whole series. And we have the Noahide series that I've been a little neglectful about being consistent with, but I'm doing the best I can. So thanks for your grace. And here we are with the biblical Hebrew series. I would like to acknowledge and thank Colin for a generous donation to the channel, dedicated to the fallen IDF soldiers who are standing up to protect the entire world, whether they realize it or not. I also want to dedicate tonight's class in memory of my wife's grandmother, whose yahrzeit is tonight. That is the anniversary of her passing is tonight. Although I was not given a Hebrew name for her, I texted someone probably with too late notice. Please tell me her Hebrew name, and I didn't get an answer. So I don't know. Her name was Dora Oxenhorn in English, and in Hebrew, I think she was like Devora. You know, they sometimes had a Yiddish name, Dobra. Dobra was like Deborah, Devora, daughter of, I don't know, so we'll just say Sarah Imenu, the matriarch Sarah. My wife's grandmother, yahrzeit is tonight. Her soul should be uplifted in the memory of our learning. If you'd like to support the channel, like, subscribe, share these videos, go ahead and you can offer a donation through the links underneath. You can use my ArtScroll affiliate link, artscroll.com/Rebbe, Rafi, REBBIRAFI, to shop at ArtScroll, and I will earn a commission. And with no further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at the text. Here. Okay. So last time we were looking at verse 14. In verse 14, God said, "Let there be luminaries in the firmament of the heavens to divide between the day and the night, and they will be for signs and for appointed times and for days and for years." Okay, and we fleshed all that out last time, and now we're ready to move on, I hope. Any questions before we begin or comments? Oh, I forgot to announce the attendance. We have a nice attendance in the studio tonight. We have Abigail, Colin, Trey, Lisa, and Tim. We have Liz in the YouTube live stream. Anyone who's watching, give a shout out. Put something in the comments. Let us know you're here. It's telling me we have 4 viewers on YouTube right now, 4 live viewers. Okay. So verse number 15, okay, reads as follows. והיו למאורות ברכיה השמים להאיר על הארץ ויהי כן. Which means as follows. Vihayu. So I don't think we did this last time, right? We didn't do 15, but we had Vihayu over here. That's what we had it. Vihayu, the Vav and the Hayu from the Shorish, Hey, Yud, Hey, Haya, meaning to be. And the suffix at the end is they, past tense. So Hayu would be they did, but the reversing Vav makes it future, and they will be. So same thing over here, Vahayu, and they will be. And they will be what? Lim oros. So again, we have the prefix lamed for, and meoros, like meoros over here, luminaries, and they will be for luminaries. Bir kia hashamayim, same as over here, in the firmament of the heavens. Lehair. Okay, so lehair is another infinitive verb in the causative form, like we have over here, lehavdil, to divide, right? We have the lamed two, the hey, and remember the form of the causative is hey before the shoresh, then the first 2 letters of the shoresh, then a yud, and then the final letter of the shoresh, lehavdil. So to divide, in Hebrew, it's literally to cause to divide, but in English, we would still say to divide. And here we have the same thing. We have a hey, then we have an aleph, a yud, and a resh. So the aleph and the resh are letters of the shoresh. We know there's supposed to be 3 letters in a shoresh, but there are 4 letters, that's 4. 4 letters that drop out of a shoresh, which are yud, vav, nun, and hey, the yona letters. And so therefore one of those letters is missing from the shoresh that includes aleph and resh. And presumably, right, if we follow the format here, it would be one of these 2 letters, because there's only one prior to the yud, and there ought to be 2. So one of the missing, the missing of the 2 letter, the missing one of the 2 letters that is supposed to be here has to be yud, vav, nun, or hey. So if I would let you guess, seeing the aleph and the resh, and knowing you have to plug in one of those 4 letters, if I would have you guess what is the missing letter and what is the shoresh, go ahead.
I would say Bob, and the shorts
Okay.
would be like 4, maybe.
Okay, excellent. The missing letter is vav, and the word aleph, vav, resh is or, like we had way back in verse number 3, yehi or. Okay, let there be light. So the verb, it's the verb form of the noun light, right? So, and again, it's also the root of me'orot, luminaries. Okay. Here, this is the word right here. There will be for luminaries, there's or right there, in the firmament of the heavens, lehair, to illuminate. To illuminate. Al ha'aretz. What's al ha'aretz? Very easy.
On earth.
On the earth, more specifically, to illuminate upon the earth. To illuminate upon the earth. And then we have vayhi chen, like we had many times, right? And it was so, right? Or it was firmly established. So that all this from the third word in verse 14 till the third to last word in 15 is what God is saying. God says, let there be luminaries in the firmament of the heavens to divide between the day and the night, and they shall be for signs and for set times and for days and for years, and they shall be for luminaries in the firmament of the heavens to illuminate upon the earth. End quote. Vayhi chen, and then the narrative tells us, the third person omniscient narrative tells us, and it was so. Okay, any questions on that? Now that was pretty swift. We got through an 9-word verse in a couple of minutes because we were pretty much familiar with all of these words already. Now it's just repetition. And the only quasi-new thing was the verb lehair, which Colin was able to recognize immediately is related to the word or, which we already learned. So it was very easy to translate. See, isn't it feeling lighter? A little bit lighter, the translation exercise? No questions on this? I'm not going to get bogged down. I'm going to try not to get bogged down. If you're not asking, I'm going to move on. Okay? It doesn't need to be bogged down with all of my logical questions that I have brought up in the past. Here we're dealing with plain meaning. So that's the plain translation. And if you don't have a problem with it, we're going to go on. Do I hear someone speaking up?
I was just going to ask, why do you think that those 2 verses are split up when they're so similar and they really could be incorporated in one verse, sort of?
Okay, so you're not really asking why it's split up here, or maybe you are, but it sounds like you're asking at least partially why the repetition.
Yeah.
So you're asking more about the repetition than the division of verses.
Well, sort of. Yeah, because it sort of just it repeats sort of what was said in 14, and then
Okay, so I'll tell you why it doesn't exactly repeat. It does and it doesn't. You're right. It looks like it does. Um, so I'll try to address it. They shall be for luminaries in the heavens. Now, what's interesting is here it says, "Let there be luminaries," and here's "They shall be for luminaries." So why not? And they shall be luminaries. Now that would be a real repetition. But here it's there shall be luminaries, and here it's and they shall be for luminaries. So it follows the phraseology here. There will be luminaries, and then what's it going to do? It's going to divide between the day and the night, or what they will do, they will be for the purpose of signs, set times, days, and um, years. Here we spoke about last time the different divisions of time that the luminaries signify, like signs for who, right? For man. That we look up at the stars, and from what we see, when I say the stars, I mean, the heavens and the celestial bodies, the sun, the moon, the stars. From what we see, we can derive what season, what time, month, day, date, festival, so on. So that's as far as man's relationship toward the the luminaries, right? What we derive from what we see. But there's another purpose for the luminaries, which is to be luminaries. That means to provide light. Aside from being visual spectacles for man to derive time from and to calculate time based on them, they're also going to provide light. And that's what it means here. V'hayu limorot, and they shall be 4 luminaries, meaning 4 light-giving bodies, birkia shemayim, in the firmament of the heavens, lehair al haaretz, right, to provide light upon the earth. There's right. This verse is dealing with the purpose of how man will relate to them, and this is dealing with what it will provide for man, I guess you could say, physically, by providing light, as opposed to just conceptually of being vehicles for man to calculate time. Now I want to just peek at my notes to see if I jotted down anything else I wanted to share about this verse. Okay, that's basically what Rashi says. So, okay. Yeah, Ramban says something similar, that their light will reach that their light will reach all the way to the earth, which is a similar way of saying that it'll illuminate. It's not just that we'll see it, but the light will actually come and light up this place. Oh, so, and some of them say to shine upon the earth. To shine upon the earth is, again, it's indicating that the purpose of everything, of the luminaries, their purpose is the earth, right? The destination, the goal of their creation is to shine light upon the earth. That's why they're there, right? If they wouldn't be providing something for the earth, they have no purpose. That they're not just there to shine and look pretty. Look pretty is because who's looking? Because we're looking, right? There's no other reason for them to be placed in the heavens except lahair la'aretz, for the purpose of illuminating the earth. It's a reiteration of the idea that all this is for mankind. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. You may have more questions as we get to the following verse retroactively. So just keep that in mind. Okay. Now, verse number 16 is as follows. Vaya'as Elohim es shnei hama'oros hagedolim es hama'or hagadol lememsheles hayom ve'es hama'or hakaton lememsheles halayla ve'es hakochavim. Nice long verse. What's going on in this nice long verse? We have Vaya'as Elohim. Now, did we have this verb before? Vaya'as? Anyone remember? I'm trying to think if we had it before. Yeah, we did have it. We had it a bunch of times. So since we had it a bunch of times, maybe someone could tell me. We had it up here in verse number 7. Vaya'as Elohim at Harakia. Maybe somebody wants to remind us what that means.
And he made?
Made, right? And he made. The shorish is asa, ein sin hey, and the hey flies away. Vaya'as Elohim, and God made et shenei hameorot hagedolim. Okay, so we have, he made what? Et. We have that object signifier. This is what he made. Shenei. Anyone know the meaning of shenei?
2.
Two. Very good. Now 2 is shenayim, but shenei is like construct form. It's like 2 of. So it'll be 2 connected with what? It's 2 what? Shenei something. Shenei hameorot. Okay. So God made the 2 luminaries. Now you'll say, how come it doesn't say ha shenei hameorot if it's the 2 luminaries? So here, well, there's two things happening, but mainly hameorot, the luminaries. Okay. It's telling us that he made the luminaries. When you add the number 2 to it, 2 of the luminaries. But when I say that 2 of them, makes it sound like there's more, but that's not what it means. The 2 luminaries. It's in English, idiomatically, the definite article moves from the noun luminaries to the number the 2 luminaries. In Hebrew, it doesn't do that. It stays on the noun, the luminaries, right? So, but it gets the number 2. So together, Shnei HaMe'orot, we say in English, the 2 luminaries, okay? And God made the 2 luminaries, and then Hagidolim. What's Hagidolim? Did we discuss this before? Gadol?
Yeah,
Probably
the
not.
great in plural, and the hey carries on to that adjective.
Okay, so we have that. We have the adjective from the root Gimel Dalad Lamed, Gadol, which means big or great, and plural. Why is it plural? It's plural because the noun is plural. So whenever you have an adjective describing a noun, the number and gender of the adjective has to match the number and gender of the noun. So gedolim, masculine plural, for me'orot, which are really masculine plural, even though we mentioned last time, it's an exception that it has a feminine suffix for reasons that are beyond my knowledge. It's just we learn it as an exception. Why? I don't know. I didn't make the language. But so, and then it has the definite article because also in Hebrew, the adjective following a noun with a definite article, the adjective also gets the definite article. So, yeah. Hameorot hagedolim, the big luminaries or great luminaries. And God made the 2 great luminaries. Okay? Vaya'as Elohim et shenei hameorot hagedolim. And God made the 2 great luminaries. Is that clear? Any questions on that? Okay. Et hamaor hagadol. So, object signifier. Hamaor. Now you tell me, what's hamaor?
Luminary single?
Luminary single. Hagadol.
The great.
The great.
So The great luminary?
The great luminary. So it's like this. And God made the two great luminaries, comma, the great luminary, limemshelet, singular, limemshelet hayom. Okay, so let's work. Hayom is easy. Limemshelet is harder. Okay, so lamed prefix, 4. Now, memshelet is based on this 3-letter root, mem shin lamed, mashal, which means to rule or to govern. Okay, so based on that, there's a noun, memshala, like if you didn't have this tough here and you had a hey instead, memshala, the word memshala, I'll put it in the notes so you can see it. File open. Okay, here are the notes. We'll go down. Okay, we'll look at this word here. Mem shala. Okay, mem shala. You can see here's the shoresh, and this is a verb, noun form. Mem shala. It's obviously a feminine noun. Mem shala means governance, government, right? Memshelet Yisrael, the government of Israel. Okay, so what's with the tough of Memshelet? We have Memshelet. Let's write that. I'll actually just copy and paste it so it's quicker. Okay. Okay. Memshelet. Put it on its own line. Memshelet, with this tough suffix here, this is the construct form of the word Memshala. Okay, Memshala, government, governance, rulership, if you will. Memshala, Memshelet is governance of, dominion of. Okay, so Memshelet. So we go back to the verse. Limemshelet hayom means for the governance of the day. Okay, or if you like, it'd be like to prevail over the day. If you want to like elasticize the phrase a little bit, the idiom, but the great luminary for the governance of the day, if you will. Ve'et ha'maor hakaton, and right, ve'et ha'maor, and the luminary, adjective. Ha, definite article, matches the noun. Ha, adjective, katon. What's katon? Anyone?
Smaller, maybe?
Small, right? Katon is small. Gadol, big. Katon, small. And the small luminary, ve'et ha'maor hakaton, and the small luminary, limemshelet halayla. Again, limemshel, for the governance of halayla. What's halayla?
The night.
The night, for the governance of the night. So the great luminary for the governance of the day, and the small luminary for the governance of the night. Ve'et, right? And object, hakochavim. So we have definite article. We have im suffix, so we presume this is a masculine plural noun, and the singular would be kochav. And does anyone know what a kochav is?
It's a star.
A kochav is a star. So kochavim are stars. Ha-kochavim, the stars. Ve'et ha-kochavim, and the stars. So altogether it's, and God made the two great luminaries. The great luminary for the governance of the day, and the small luminary for the governance of the night, and the stars. Okay, questions?
Does that mean Hashem made the stars, or the moon is for the governance of the stars?
Interesting. Let's say that for the governance of the night and the stars, meaning the governance of two things, the night and the stars. That's interesting. I hadn't considered that. I'm not even sure I saw that in a commentary that suggested. I like the reading, except it doesn't seem that anyone seems to feel that the moon has governance over the stars. Although I'll tell you something that may connect with that. Maybe it's hinting at that. Although I never understood it that way. It seems to be that it's and the stars, like, also he made these two great luminaries and the stars. And by the way, the stars go with the night, right? So there's the small luminary for the governance of the night, comma, and the stars with it at night, although it doesn't seem that the stars are doing any governance, if you will. They're just, or maybe they are, right? In other words, especially if you accept the ideas of astrology, that the stars exert an influence over the affairs of mankind, there would certainly seem to be some governance there. There's certainly a lot of influence upon the earth that is felt from the sun. The sun does a lot of stuff, aside from just lighting up. It provides heat, it evaporates the oceans, photosynthesis. I mean, the sun is providing a lot for the earth. The moon is at least influencing the tides, which are very important. So there is, so to speak, a governance of the great luminary, which is a reference to the sun, and the small luminary, which is a reference to the moon. The question is, do the stars have governance? Is that meant here? Unclear. Certainly an astrologer would say yes. Now, what does Judaism say? Judaism has a difference of opinion about astrology. There are statements in the oral tradition that give credence to astrology. However, there are later scholars, and I don't mean contemporary scholars, let's say the Rambam, Maimonides, very prominent among them, who rejects those statements of the sages that give credence to astrology, and other seemingly superstitious statements in the sages. And he says that they're really not meant literally, and the sages were just speaking in a certain common parlance that was popular among the people of the time to convey certain ideas, but they didn't literally mean to put a stamp on the idea that astrology is genuine. Maimonides is heavily criticized for seeming to obscure these statements of the early sages, which we greatly revere. So it's controversial, but certainly there is a stream of thought within Jewish tradition that astrology is legitimate. Now, when I say that, does that mean you're going to pick up your local newspaper and turn to the horoscopes and it's going to mean anything? No, it's all baloney. It's all baloney. Anything today that claims to be a horoscope or to be able to predict the future using horoscopes and constellations and all that kind of stuff, it's bogus nonsense. The question is, meaning, I'll put it to you differently. We certainly nowadays do not have access to understanding the influence of the stars. And so anyone who claims such a thing today is lying to you. However, is there actually an influence of the stars that, in theory, would you know how to interpret it? You could know certain trends of the future. The answer is that's controversial, but there are statements in our tradition that would say yes. And that
Rabbi?
said, hold on, Colin, one more remark. That said, many understand certain statements in the text, in the Chumash, in the Tanakh, to show how, despite the fact that God did grant certain influences to the celestial bodies, and that's not so far-fetched, because we see, like I'm describing now, even the physical influences of celestial bodies like the sun and the moon. And maybe stars also play some role gravitationally, whether we detect it or not. those are real physical things we may be able to measure. So this idea that spiritually also there's some influence, and it's a real natural force. Despite that, God has total governance over all these forces, and the one who attaches himself to God can overcome any natural force, whether it's, something within the physical world, the spiritual world, what we call natural or supernatural, what we call physical or metaphysical. God is above it all, and one who is attached to him can likewise rise above all these forces. We're not saying that stars have absolute control over our lives, which would be idolatry, but that maybe there is some delegated influence that God's given to them, like the laws of physics, but these would be like metaphysical powers. But God, so to speak, is the one in ultimate control, and therefore one who puts his faith in God, and that's why the Torah commands we're not allowed to seek after diviners and sorcerers and astrology. It's actually forbidden in the Torah to seek out astrological signs. So there's a question: is it forbidden because it's false, or is it forbidden because it's an impure force? It's like, there are pigs, but we're not allowed to eat them. The Torah doesn't forbid pigs because they don't exist. It forbids them because they do exist. So the fact that the Torah forbids it, some read as almost a statement that there are such things, but we're forbidden from using them because they are not kosher. Astrology is not kosher, but it exists. So then maybe you could understand the governance of the stars that way. I want to say more about the governance of the stars in response to Abigail's comment, but Colin, you wanted to say something, I think.
Oh, I was just going to say that maybe we, humankind on the whole, the understanding or knowledge of that kind of stuff was taken away at the same time that prophecy was removed.
Possibly, but I don't necessarily want to go that far, because the sages who lived after the time of prophecy some of them were said to be skilled in astrology. That is, that they knew, they had the wisdom, they knew how to look at natural phenomenon and make interpretations based on it. So when I say it's forbidden, it doesn't even necessarily it's forbidden to know it, or it's forbidden to read what the stars say, but it's forbidden to believe that that future is immutable, and to sort of you're not allowed to conduct your life based on the signs that you see in the stars. You conduct your life based on God's commands. Period. You don't make decisions about the future based on what you see in the stars. The Torah says, Tamim tiyeh im Hashem Elokecha, you shall be whole with your God. Tamim, whole, wholesome, perfect. There's a lot of ways to translate the word tamim, but it says that in conjunction with you shall not perform divinations and astrology and so on, is that we're not supposed to look at these portents of the future and let them guide our lives. Okay, I'm going to do this because I saw this sign. It talks about, like, the black cat crosses your path, so you don't want to go out that day because it's bad luck, right? A broken mirror, walking under a ladder, opening a umbrella indoors, throwing salt over your shoulder. This kind of stuff. The Torah says you disregard all of that, whether or not it's real. But you Jews, Torah says it's not a commandment for Noachites. They want to live by astrology, goes into hate, as we say. Go have a good life, but do it in good health. But a Jew is forbidden from conducting his life based on these kinds of so-called superstitious signs. Okay, but the point I'm making is that there are sages identified in the post-prophetic era, even many centuries past the post-prophetic era, who were said to be knowledgeable in this discipline. So it seems that there were those who could still read astrological signs even after prophecy. So it's somewhat unrelated to prophecy. It's distinct from prophecy. Because prophecy is not like that, right? God said, and it's actually in that section. So it's probably Deuteronomy 13, where it says, I'm going to give you prophets. You don't go after these signs because I'm going to give you prophets. So prophecy is given as an antidote to these things, or a foil for these things, or in contradistinction from these things. Anyway, so I don't think that's related. That's what I think. Okay. As it appears to me. So what I wanted to, Lisa, did you want to say something?
Well, I had a question, Rabbi Mullet, on this verse. Up until what is it that we just went over? 16?
Yeah, we
It's
just did
always been and it was evening and it was morning, and it was evening and it's morning. But here when it talks about the luminaries, it talks about the day first rather
the day
than
and
evening
the
to
night.
morning.
Oh, you're saying
Yes.
evening first and then morning, versus here it's day
Yeah.
and night. Why does
Yeah.
it bring the day before the night, and there it says the evening before the morning? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I That's an excellent question. I've never heard anyone ask this question before, of why does it say day and then night, and there it says evening and then morning. That's a great question.
I think
Maybe
it
it's just
starts. There's a difference in when you're talking about the night and the day in those previous verses, where here, and it's talking about the luminaries. The sun is what we use to determine our shortest amount of time. The day, when we see the sun and then it disappears and it reappears again, we have a day. But then when you move to the moon does months. That's how we determine our months, by the cycle of the moon.
Yes.
The kokabim, did I say that right?
Kokhabim, yeah.
They are what we use to determine much longer periods of time, like years, and I can't remember what these other astronomical terms are, but they're larger cycles that we go through, and we can determine that by looking at the stars. And once we know all of these, the sun, the moon, and the stars and how they work, we can do things like figure out when our animals are going to calve and when the crop is going to be ready to harvest. And without knowing these things, we're just kind of in chaos. I don't know if
And
that's
I find it
relevant to.
but
Go
then
So
ahead.
I
you're saying
find it
here the
interesting.
priority is to the sun first. I was also thinking maybe because the sun is the more prominent luminary, so it's listing it in order of its prominence, and the moon gets its light from the sun, and the stars have their own light, but the stars don't illuminate the earth. We don't get light. The stars don't light up the earth. We can see the light of the stars, but they don't light up the earth. Like, if there's no moon out and there's no sun out, so it's nighttime and there's no moon out, it's like pitch black. We can see the stars. You could be like in the desert, right? And look up, you'll see a very, very starry sky, but it's not going to light up the earth. The moon provides quite a bit of light. If you've ever been, see, most of us in the city, we don't appreciate it because we have night lights. But when you go out into the desert and there's no artificial light, when the moon is out, it lights up quite a bit. We don't appreciate how much light we get from the moon.
It
But
can even cast shadows.
that may be, and it makes sense, right? If it's casting light, it's casting shadows. But you could be outside with no moon, like whatever. Let's say it's a new moon, so there's no moonlight, and you'll see a very starry sky, but around you it'll be like super dark. So the stars aren't providing like Lahair al haaretz, like we talked about before, to cause light upon the earth. That is not happening with the stars. It is happening with the moon and the sun more prominently. So it could be that it's sort of listing it here in this context in order of the prominence of light. Okay. There was a remark of Abigail about the
governance. I've actually had a thought
yeah.
of how the moon would govern the stars, and I'm thinking the amount of light that is reflected off the surface of the moon is such that the stars become visible. So in the daytime, the stars are there, but you can't see them. But at night, the moon controls the fact that you can see the stars.
How so? How so?
Because the amount of light that is reflected from the surface of the moon is not enough to cancel out the light from all the stars. So when the moon is out, you can see the stars. So therefore, the amount of light that emanates from it, even though it's not its own light, but the amount of light that comes from the moon governs the fact that you can see the stars at night.
But if the moon weren't there, you'd still see the stars. So it seems like the amount of light that's coming from the moon is unrelated to the ability to see the stars.
Whether it's a new moon or a full moon, you still can see the stars when the moon
Right.
is.
So then, therefore, I'm saying the moon is not affecting the ability to see the stars.
Kind of is, because it only gives enough light to a point where you can still see the stars even when it's a full moon.
And you still would call that like a governance or an influence when it's
Yeah, maybe
holding back
because
its light.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, something like that. That
Okay,
it's only
maybe,
happened to a degree, and
maybe,
therefore
I don't
that
know.
controls the fact that you can see the stars. Maybe.
Maybe. So in other words, you want to say that there's governance of the moon over the stars? Is that what you want to say? The
That's the only
governance
way
of the
I could
night
see
and
it.
the
Yeah.
stars.
Yeah.
So here's what I was gonna remark about that. Rashi points out, and some of you may have noticed, and maybe some of you were gonna ask if I didn't so rudely interrupt all of you all the time, that it says the two great luminaries, and then it says the great luminary singular and the small luminary. Now, if there's two great luminaries, why does it suddenly switch to one great luminary only and one small luminary? We didn't hear about one great luminary and one small luminary. We heard about two great luminaries. Suddenly, we switched to one great and one small. What happened to two great? So I'll just throw that question out. Anyone have a thought on that?
Their size is great compared to how we see the stars. They're great from our point of view on Earth. So again, it's how human beings perceive them.
Okay, good. So that is how some of the commentaries deal with it, is to say they're both great. Of the two, one is greater than the other. So sort of objectively, they are the great luminaries. Subjectively, one is called the great and one is called the minor, well, like major and minor, because one is gives more light and one less, or one is the primary giver of light and the other is the reflector of the light. So relative to one another, subjectively, they're called one great, one small, but objectively, from our perspective, they both appear great. Although again, we can also perceive that one is greater than the other. So the two great is a certain relative scale, and then one great, one small is a different relative scale. But they were
They
talking.
both appear exactly the same size to our eyes.
That's right. And that's a great miracle, by the way. People don't appreciate how that is like the greatest wink from God that there is. First of all, that the moon is perfectly round. You could look at the moons of other planets like Mars. They're like potato shaped. They're just these oddly shaped rocks, right? Our moon is so, to the perception of our eye, perfectly round, like the disk of the sun, the way we see it, perfectly round. Not only that, but it's just we're exactly, it's just so amazing, the ballet of the cosmos. We're exactly the right distance from the sun for life to exist. And I'm not going to go into all that now, but there's been so much written and said about this. You could look it up. I mean, it's just the precision is beyond astounding. It's just so obvious and clear that this is a mechanical design, and the moon is exactly the right size and distance from the Earth for a number of things to happen, for the gravitational tides and so on, which we need. It's the perfect size for that, but it's also the perfect equal size of the sun in the sky, and there's no reason it had to be that way. It just perfectly matches up. They're the same shape and size, the moon and the sun. That's like to say that's an astronomical coincidence is not even beginning to cut how phenomenally obscure the chances of that is. It's a very, very obvious purposeful creation, and then the moon passes exactly in front of the sun, right? You get an eclipse, and it makes this perfect line, with the corona coming out, so that's like God winking at you, like, hey guys, it's me. Like I made this. So that's a great perception. Now Rashi quotes a midrash to resolve this discrepancy of the two great versus one great, one small. It's a famous midrash. Some of you may be familiar with it. That originally, now I'm going to the caveat. You don't have to understand this literally, but it's a great story. That originally God created the sun and moon the same size. And the moon came to God and said, two kings cannot rule with one crown. Basically, the moon acted arrogantly and said, God, pick one. Wink, wink. Pick one. It can't be two kings with one crown. So God said, you're right. There can't be two kings with one crown. You're going to be subservient to the other. And the moon was diminished. Okay. So at first it was too great. God made the two great luminaries. But after this episode, one was diminished so that you had one great and one small. And it's indicating a progression. Now, furthermore, though, it says, but in order to comfort the moon, because of its diminished stature, God populated the night sky with stars as sort of a comfort. So it's almost there that the moon has, if you will, dominion. He's like king over the sky of these little sparkles of light to compensate him for the loss of the crown, as it were, of being the great luminary. But he's going to have this company of many, many little small lights in the sky when at his time, when he rules, right? So that was his compensation for being diminished. And in that way, it seems that God was giving him. I never thought of it this way, Abigail. Meaning the Medrash has always been there, and Rashi's always said it, but I never thought of it in terms of when it says in the verse, the governance of the night and the stars. I thought he made it for the governance of the night, and God made the stars also like that, not for the governance of anything in particular, because they don't have the influence that the moon and sun have. But like we don't need them, so to speak. What would happen if they would like disappear?
Wait. I have a question.
Yeah. Trey, just a second. So just to finish that thought, when
Oh, sorry.
Abigail sort of forced me to think about it that way, I realized maybe that is how the midrash is reading it. That the moon lost his crown by being diminished, but God comforted him by giving him dominion over the stars. He crowded the sky with stars during the time of the moon's dominion. That he has this sort of, these subjects in the sky, if you will. Now, that is, of course, a homily, and we're meant to draw personal lessons from it. But at least that could be how the Midrash is reading it. And if that's so, it could have been an intended lesson on the level of homiletical interpretation that was put in the Torah by the author. And therefore, then it would mean that the moon has dominion over the stars in one level of meaning. Okay, Trey, go.
Okay, so the last two words, Vayet HaKokomim, Kokobim, what is the direct Vayet? That's a direct marker, a direct object marker
Yeah.
for what verb? Are these all coming off of the verb Vayes? The initial word of the verse?
Presumably, it's vayas, the
Vayas.
verb, and he made. What did he make? Et shnei hama'orot hagdolim. He made what? The two great luminaries, comma, and now it goes into particular. Et hama'or hagadol. He made the great luminary for the governance of the day. Ve'et hama'or hakatton, and the small luminary for the governance of the night. Ve'et hakochavim, and the stars. So in other words, the plain meaning would be God made et the two luminaries, that which are et the great luminary and et the minor luminary and et the stars. Okay, that's how it would read plainly grammatically. Does that make sense? Good? Happy? Satisfied?
Oh yeah, I got it. But yeah, I understand.
Okay. Liz says evening to morning versus day to night. Didn't we say that day could be 24 hours, and doesn't the sun rule over that by causing the light in the day and the night? Oh, that's very good. That's very good. Very deep. I like it. The sun has governance over the day, which is a 24-hour period, because even the light we see at night from the moon is really only a reflection of the sun. So the sun is still, so to speak, governing the day, which is a 24-hour period that includes the night, whereas the night is limited only to that part of the day. And again, we said day could have several meanings, one of which is the entire 24-hour period, as well as the period of light is called day. And there are two meanings for the same word, and we were understanding it one way here, the governance of the day, meaning the period of light of the day. But Liz is suggesting it means the day, meaning it has governance over all 24 hours, because even the light of the moon is only really a reflection of the light of the sun. So the sun is governing both in a certain way. It's like the moon is his, his deputy, So good. I like that. That was a very clever idea. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we close it out? Because it's 9:02.
We're not seeing anything about the warmth of the sun, only the light.
Okay, you're right. It's not spelled out. I was kind of inferring it from the Memshalah, the governance of the sun, which would include its influences. Now, we already know that it was for light. As a matter of fact, it's going to be in the next verse. In other words, we heard God's intention, there shall be, right? And now we're hearing God making it. And in the next verse, it's going to talk about להאיר, it's to illuminate upon the earth in its making stage. So the question is, what's the governance, right? What's to prevail, to prevail over the day? It prevails over the day. So you're right. It does not mean heat. Like, that's not what the words mean. Maybe I'm sort of, I don't know if I'm imposing that meaning, but I am trying to offer some type of broader meaning to governance more than just light, because we already heard about light, and this is a different word. So what other kind of governance? It doesn't have to be heat. It could be other things. And the sun does give heat, and it's not mentioned specifically it's not mentioned specifically the heat of the sun, right? So I don't know if you have to mention it. Maybe it doesn't have to be mentioned. It's implied, or it's obvious, or doesn't need to be stated, whatever it is. But I guess I was trying, kind of in my mind, including in the idea of, for the governance of the day, other functions of the sun aside from light. Well, we have two functions. We have that it's used to tell time, and it's used to give light. And it's interesting here, when it talks about God making it, it doesn't mention time again. Like, and God made it for the signs and for the blah, blah, blah. Maybe because it wasn't yet, right? Until man, then that doesn't exist yet. In his intention, it shall be for that, but when he makes it, it isn't yet that, till man appears. Or maybe that is the intent of the governance of the day, is coming to include all those units of time that we mentioned before as part of that. It provides those as well. The governance of the day is a very ambiguous term, so I think its meaning is elastic. So you're right that I said heat. Torah doesn't say heat. Could that be included in Mמשלת? I think it could. Does it have to be? I don't suppose it has to be. What's included in Mמשלת? We gave a few options. I would say, judge for yourself. Sandy says tides are part of governance. Yeah, so we mentioned tides. We did mention tides, but that's more connected to the moon rather than the sun, as far as I know. Maybe the sun also creates tides. I don't know that much, but we were trying to think what the governance of the sun is. Maybe it's just the fact that it's so prominent in the sky. It's like it appears like a type of a ruler. It appears to be like a ruler over the sky, if you will. And it, just a sort of poetic euphemism. But that is the kind of direct translation of the verse, what we did tonight. Okay, everybody comfortable with that? If you have any lingering questions or comments, send me an email, rabbi@rafimallet.com, or reach out on WhatsApp, or however other ways you prefer.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
You're welcome. B'nai Noach Hearts for Hashem. Great teaching, Rabbi. Everyone had a great evening. Everyone have a great evening and a blessed rest of your week. You're all welcome. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. If you made it this far, if you're watching on YouTube and you made it this far, consider joining the channel and subscribing, liking, sharing, and making a contribution if you so desire and are moved to do so. Everybody have a great night and a great week. We'll see you again. I hope to produce Noahide Laws video tomorrow. Just see how the day goes. It's been rough. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Rabbi.
You're welcome. Good
Bye,
night.
Latov.
Bye.
Good night.